Anxiety sucks, and we all know it. Whether it's pre-test anxiety, anxiety over just living, we all know those feelings of anxiety that we experience in our lives. And they are not fun. But they mean something. So let's talk about it. Hi, and welcome back to the It's a Girl Thing podcast. You're here with me, Kate, and I am your lovely host of this show, all the way from little New Zealand in our little corner of the internet, and I am so happy you're here. Now, if you are brand new here or you've been here for some time now, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for tuning in, thanks for checking us out and being a part of our little story, our little life together. And I guess quick little things about me. This week has been a long week, but we're going to dig into that some more as this episode goes on. But I do just want to acknowledge how I couldn't do this without you. Every episode you listen to, every social media post you like, any episodes you've shared or messages you send me and tell me that you like it, they mean the world to me. And knowing that I'm not alone helps make it easier for me to continue doing this and reminding you that you're not alone. If you want to get more involved with our little community, there are little ways you can do that. We have the most gorgeous little group chat over on Instagram where we just kind of chat about life. We talk about the fun stuff, the not so good stuff, and sometimes there's a little bit of chaos, which is always fun. But if you want to join us, you can head over to the website itsagirlthingpodcast.com and register your interest on our Connect page. If you want to know a bit more, that's also the place to head. Now, let's get into it. Today, we're going to be talking about anxiety. And I think it's about time for me to talk about it again. For those of you who know or don't know, when I started this podcast, the second episode I ever did after my All About Me episode was called Anxious Girlies Unite. And it was all about me at the time, the rational and irrational anxiety I faced, why that was important, and tips that I had to overcome it. And I thought, almost 2 years down the track, what better way to talk about it some more and acknowledge it than in Mental Health Awareness Month? So, as you know, or don't know, I have struggled with anxiety for several years now, since probably honestly 2018, at the very least. I've always been a little bit like, it's hard to explain because I was always a very outgoing kid, but I was also very introverted all at the same time. So I could be really outgoing because I did lots of theatre and dance and things like that, but I would also struggle to do basic things that were expected of me for my age. So that really kind of was a stem for my anxiety. And I've never ever had any diagnosis or anything like that, but I can acknowledge the feeling of anxiety. And so anytime I speak of anxiety, I'm not speaking of an anxiety disorder, which if I choose to speak, I will specify as a disorder as opposed to feelings of anxiety, because I do not want to belittle anybody who does have an anxiety disorder and does experience this differently. And I also obviously want to disclaim and say that everyone's anxiety is going to be different. We're all very different people. So, yeah. As I said, I've experienced anxiety since about 2018, quite full on. That was due to bullying and other life things and that kind of navigating who you are. Then high school happened and it got worse. And some days I really struggled. I had my first panic attack in 2019. I proceeded to continue to have panic or anxiety attacks throughout high school. And it was actually only when I moved away to uni did some of that anxiety start to cease. And I truly thought it would live with me forever. Like, it was such a big part of my life and did actually control me quite a bit. And there were moments where I'd do something and mum would be like, "That's so silly, why can't you do that? Or you should be able to do this." And I'm like, I can't explain to you why I can't, because there's no real reason. I just can't. So I want you to know that in moments like that, you aren't alone. There are many things about anxiety that are inexplainable. So moving on, I go to uni. I obviously have a peak of anxiety as I get started, but as I kind of settle into that uni life and have to forcibly put myself out there a little bit, I feel that really challenged my anxiety, because I had to know that if I wanted to do my groceries, if I wanted to eat well, if I wanted to do the things that make me me and make me feel my best, then I needed to challenge that anxiety. And a lot of the time that's easier said than done, and it was like a little bit at a time and week by week and day by day. But slowly, that sense of like everyday anxiety, a little bit of that dread, or those tasks that I never used to be able to do on my own, I had to do on my own. And that really pushed that for me. But why I want to talk about it today is this week I had a panic attack again for the first time in a long, long time. And anybody who potentially has experienced panic or anxiety attacks or long episodes of anxiety knows that often after them comes a real long period of like, I call it panic attack fog or panic fog, where after your brain's just kind of like a cloud, like your body's recovering. And so you can't really think or function, and you still feel overwhelmed, but you don't actually feel that like panic anymore. You just feel there. You just feel in the moment. And it really sucked, because I was like, I've come so far in my anxiety. I have conquered things. I can do this. I can do that, which I never ever thought I would have been able to do. And then all of a sudden, with no reason whatsoever, I was taken down by everyday life. And I don't know if I was tired, if something triggered it, but all of a sudden we were standing in our young adults group and we were singing worship songs for God before we got into our like actual stuff we do at our group for the night. And next thing I know, I'm feeling like the panic come on, and I'm feeling the need to like start hyperventilating because I'm struggling in my head to breathe. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like, there is 10 other people in this room. I cannot do this right now, not in front of everybody. And so I very carefully, quietly, as much as one can, in a small room, made my way out the door and like walked down the concrete until I was far enough away and let the like panic consume me, and trying to calm myself down, but also knowing that if I let it out, it usually passes quicker, and that if I work through that. And a little side note, but important to note, and actually in a way symbols where I'm at in my journey with anxiety, was for the first time in my life, somebody came after me. And I don't know if I'm the only one, and I probably am not, but when I've had panic attacks in the past, or I've had to step out because my anxiety got too bad, part of me in the back of my head was like, has anybody noticed? But like, you don't want anybody to notice, but you also want somebody to notice. So it's that debate of, I really want someone to come after me, but also I don't want anyone to see me like this, but the support would be really nice, but I want to know somebody cares, but I don't know how to let somebody in. So for the first time in my life, someone came after me. And she, my wonderful friend, she asks, is it anxiety or is it a moment with God? Because sometimes, moments with God just are overwhelming. And I was like, anxiety. And I'm standing there, I'm fiddling with my necklace. I'm trying to do like my pat, which I do to help on my like clavicles to help calm myself down. And in that moment, I was like so grateful that somebody came, but I was also like, I don't know how to explain it, because all I want to do is like verbalize out loud and pace around and sound really dumb. But she helped calm me down, and we got me down to a point where I could breathe again, which was great. And then she was like, do you need anything, or do you want to be alone? And I was like, I really appreciate you coming out here, but I think I need to take a moment and then I'll come back. So she left me to myself, and then I did my little pacey, had a bit of a cry actually, but mostly because I felt sorry for myself. I felt sorry that after feeling so good for so long and not facing the everyday anxiety I experienced, and then all of a sudden being so overwhelmed. And then I did something that is the most un-Kate-like thing that we could possibly do, was I did a jog around the block, because I had so much adrenaline and energy, but no energy pulsing through me, and I needed to get it out so I could step back inside. So I did a little run round in the dark. Don't worry, it was safe. And then I headed back in. But then I had this fog, and I didn't want to talk to anyone because I was like, I know people are looking at me and they can see that I'm upset or that something's happened, and I don't want to talk about it. But part of me wants to talk about it, but I don't want to talk about it, So all this happened, and the night moved on, and then I got home really late, and I was just kind of sitting with myself and being like, that sucked. Something I've avoided for so long, or I thought I'd moved past, pulled me right back in. But then I also had to, and this is your reminder to do that for yourself, if something has dragged you back recently, something you thought you'd moved past, remember that there's a saying, I heard somebody say it the other day, I don't know if it was on TikTok, in person, church, whatever. Somebody said something along the lines of, the reason you don't feel like you're achieving your milestones, or you're like, oh, I thought I let go of that and then I'm come back and all of a sudden I'm at square one again, isn't true, because as you get closer to your goal, you just keep moving it away. You just keep expecting more of yourself. And when you expect more of yourself, there's going to be area for mistakes. There's going to be room for failures. So, yes, I may have started at point zero at the end of high school, where I was quite still in my anxiety, and then I moved to uni and it slowly moved up, but then I suddenly had this expectation that this lower anxiety life was life, right? And so then I expect more and more and more to be normal. So even when I jump back halfway and have my panic attack and have my moment where I was so overwhelmed by it that all of a sudden I feel like I'm at step one again, because I actually doubled my original goal. So I hope you remember to try not to be too hard on yourself today. I know there's so many things you want to do and so many expectations you have for yourself. But by continually trying to push yourself, it's not necessarily going to get the results you want. Now, I want to talk about two things before we wrap this episode up. So that was kind of a word vomit for me, but it was something I needed to talk about, and I thought it was the best place to talk about it was with you guys. We could unpack it together and I could kind of reflect, and we could hopefully reflect together. So I want to talk about some things that my anxiety wouldn't have let me do before, that they let me do now. And then I want to talk about a few things that might help make any anxiety in your life a little bit easier, because they do mine. So firstly, one of my biggest things that I struggled with anxiety was if you went shopping somewhere and they don't have the thing you're looking for, or you're walking around in circles and you're like, I know what I'm looking for, but I can't find it, and the website says it's in stock, right? And then you pass 3 workers and they look at you funny, but you just keep walking because you don't want to ask, because you don't want to make them do their job and you don't want to bother them, right? I no longer, occasionally there's an exception, at a text shop or somewhere that I don't have much knowledge on, I feel a little bit more awkward, but I'll still do it. But I no longer am anxious or afraid about asking for help in shops. I used to have the worst pre-test or pre-exam anxiety. No matter how many hours I studied, no matter the effort I put in, it would never feel like enough. and then post-exam anxiety because I'm like, wow, that went so much worse than it did, and then you spiral. Now I can take my tests as long as I have a good night's sleep. I know that whatever happens, happens. I've put in work. I'm not doing this in the spur of the moment, but I can do it. If you know me, I had the worst driving anxiety. It used to paralyze me in fear. I struggled to drive for so long, and then I'd finally got a bit of confidence up, and then I failed my driving test really badly. If you want to hear a little bit more about that, head to the the third episode, Life Lessons of 23. Quite an interesting story and time in there. But I was terrified of driving, and then I was terrified of having to have driving lessons and then take my test again. So that made it all worse. And then I got my license just before I moved away for uni, and I had to learn how to drive in a whole new city. I had to learn how to drive in between the two cities. So it took a lot, but honestly, I kind of like driving now. Love it even, you know? It's just a time for myself, and I often use it as a time to reflect and to think because my brain likes to think. But it's just little things like that that truly used to control me that I now have the control over. And even though this week I felt like I've taken 3 steps back, overall I still took 2 steps forward. No, I took 3 steps forward and 2 steps back is what I was trying to say. So in the end, I've still taken at least 1 step forward from where I was all that time ago. Now, little things you can do that help your anxiety. As much as it sucks, exposure therapy does work. Actually having to put yourself out there and challenge yourself, even if it's halfway there or a little bit of the way there, even if it's doing something by yourself that you wouldn't normally do. Just challenge those thoughts because they're thoughts. They're not fact. It's the same way that I say feelings aren't fact, your thoughts aren't either. And to be able to move past it, you've got to acknowledge that those thoughts are there. What else can I suggest? Roping a friend into doing those things with you so that you've got someone to fall back on when you can't complete the task, or if you can't. Or having them as an accountability buddy to celebrate your wins with you. Acknowledge your wins. Write them down. Write down the biggest things that bring you anxiety, and when you challenge them or things you've overcome, write them down so when you look back you're like, yes, I still feel anxious, and yes, my anxiety is still a problem. But look at me now versus a year ago. Little wins. Now I'm very quickly going to wrap up, and I'm going to hype you up for a minute because you deserve it. And then we will wrap this episode up for tonight. And I know it's a little late to be recording, but it's been a long weekend and I got roped into working today. But we're here and we debriefed and we unpacked and we talked all about anxiety. So here we go. Hello, beautiful girl. I see you behind the screen. I see you. The silent struggles. The moments where it feels like no one sees you. I do. When the world feels like it's crumbling down, I'm here to pick you back up. I'm only ever one message away, and I'll make you feel like the whole world is going to come back together again. Now, life's not perfect, and neither are we, but there is still so much joy coming your way. And I say this as somebody who thought her world would end, and now sits here knowing that there's no way I would want it to. And I have bad days, and you'll have bad days. But without those bad days, we don't get to know the good ones. We don't understand just how good a good day is without knowing just how bad a bad day can be. People will die. One day you will too. But today is not that day. Keep pushing forward. Keep going. Because there's so much more ahead of you. You are so deserving of this life. There is so much awaiting you, and I am so happy you're here. Just keep swimming, my loves. and have the best week ahead. Thank you for joining me as we chat this week. If you are struggling with anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, anything like that, whether it's OCD, schizophrenia, bipolar, any mental illness, I want to tell you it's not weak to speak. Heck, I'm speaking. I didn't think I'd ever be able to do this. And here we are, the second time I'm speaking about it. Third even. It's never too late to speak up. It's never too late to tell people. It's never too late to ask for help. If it feels out of control and like it controls you, maybe it's time to let someone else in, someone else hold the reins so that you can rein it in a little bit. I'm proud of you today and every day, and I hope you have the best week. All my love. See you next week.